And it shot right across the road. It was going really fast. Those aren't fast airplanes. They cruise about 115. And he was, it's telling us the engine was on full blast. Of course, I can't testify to that, but it sure was hauling.
Oh, man.
It was a really speedy dive, and it whacked in between the first and second floor of Echelon 3.
Can you show me exactly where, can you show our viewers exactly where you believe that plane hit?
See the white smoke?
Okay, we're live at 6:12 Central Standard Time. 6:12 p.m. and 27 seconds. That was from 3:15 or so Central today when I was in Russia today. Now, let's be clear here. I heard Mike Rivero just scanning through the dial on local Austin radio, Genesis talk show host. He formerly worked with big media news. He started What Really Happened in like 95, exposed the government for Vince Foster and things, lost his contacts. But he said what I already knew and what has been in many journalistic publications. There were over 1,000 bombings and terror attacks in the 60s and 70s that were real. Some were staged by government. Most were real. Communist groups, Black Panthers, others. And when you have a real terror attack, the news has an agreement with the government, and Mike was talking about this, to not cover it. There have been massive attacks against IRS buildings over the years. But when you have a real attack, they don't give attention to the terrorist. When you have a staged attack, you see a massive media blitzkrieg all over the world, all over the U.S., all over Europe. All you're seeing is this. All you're hearing is this. Now, it's not up on Infowars.com yet. We're having server problems from so much traffic. Our webmasters are locked out. It's up on prisonplanet.com right now. Get this article out to everybody in case we have other problems with that site. Source: FBI knew Austin attack was coming. Read the article. Then we have the KXAN reporting with eyewitnesses. Yeah, they were already fire trucks and police. I saw them out here, wonder what was going on, and then the plane came. On local Austin news this morning after 9:55 when it happened, they have all these highway cameras. I used to live right up by that building, a couple miles from it. They had highway cameras on the building. The FBI went around to all the businesses and seized those. We know they've gone to the neighborhood where this guy lived. Told everybody to shut up. Now, joining us are eyewitnesses. They were down at the building. They went to this Joe Stack's house. They talked to neighbors. Neighbors said, hey, have you been here earlier? We talked to you. We've made commitments not to talk now. That's the FBI. And then, looking at his photo on the news, Joe Stack, this is the live music capital of the world. He was a guitarist and a synthesizer player. Rob Dew. Rob Dew's even made some of the music for our films. Rob Dew knew him. Not well, but knew him. So let's break all this down with Jason Douglas, Rob Dew, videographers, webmasters, researchers, producers. Everybody does everything here. I cross-train everybody. You guys were down there today. That's a separate issue. Right now, what did you see? What happened when you went to his house? And then, you knew him. Let's break this down right now.
All right. Well, when we went to his house, we pulled up. There was media everywhere. A fire truck was there. So we got out, got the cameras out, started shooting. We didn't really see anybody. There wasn't a huge crowd of neighbors. There was more media. And then as it was kind of unfolding, more people started showing up. But I noticed two guys standing not next door to Joe's house, but there was a house in between there. So it was one neighbor over. It was an older gentleman and then a guy who was kind of dressed nice, you know. He had a sport coat on, was a little younger. So I walked up to him and said, hey, you know, did you guys, live here in the neighborhood? Did you know this guy? And at the time, I didn't realize I knew him. But the sharp dressed guy, I guess we'll call him that. He said it's morally and ethically I'm morally and ethically objecting to talking to you right now. And I was like, what does that mean? He goes, well, I'm going to ask the questions because I'm not going to answer any. And I said, well, why can't you answer questions? He said, well, if you would have got here earlier, I would have answered some questions. So I took that to mean somebody told him not to talk about Mr. Stack. And then before that, we'd gone to the to the building that he hit. And why don't you talk about that, Jason, because you actually saw that area a little bit before I did.
Yeah, well, actually, when we got there, the police weren't being cooperative at all. I just walked across. We were told by two, regular police officers that as long as we could approach the caution tape, but as long as we didn't go on the other side, we were cool. And immediately, I get swamped by the state police who's standing there telling me, oh, I can't be anywhere around here. I let them know I'm with the media. They don't tell me where the press tent is or anything. Right at that moment, there was a press conference going on. So I take off, walk down some stairs, try to get into the back of the building, and that's when Leffingwell comes out, Acevedo, and
That's the police chief and mayor.
Right. And then also the fire chief.
Basically, ADL employees.
Yeah, we actually split up from where we were. He was going to go around one direction. I was going to go around the other to see who could get the best view. And I got blocked off at one point where they wouldn't let anybody walking. So I turned around and went back, and then I caught up with Jason.
All right, but let's go back first. What did his house look like? Who was there? What was going on?
It was I would say it wasn't upper middle class, but it was definitely a middle class type neighborhood. Everybody's got nice lawns, nice 2-story houses, mostly brick.
Was his house burned down?
His house was completely burnt down.
Well, the only thing that's left is really the brick.
And from what I know, I know this guy. He was smart. He was a very smart guy. I didn't really know him to be very political.
Yeah, let's be clear. You knew him. Break it all down.
Yeah. Well, the last house I lived in, I had a neighbor who was a musician, and we played a lot. And I would sub in for his band for when his bass player couldn't make it. And Joe Stack was the keyboard player. And I knew Joe fairly well. I knew he was a pilot. And I didn't really put any of this together until I saw the picture. But I remember we were driving around. I'm like, I know a Joe Stack. This can't be the same guy. This is weird, but I know a Joe Stack. That I know him in Pennsylvania. That I just knew I played music with a guy named Joe Stack at some point in my life. And then when I look at the pictures, he's a short guy with glasses and gray hair, and that's him. And I'm kind of amazed because, and I talked to my buddy who ran the band. And I called him up. And I said, "Did you hear about Joe?" And he's in Houston. He said, "Yeah, it's crazy." He goes, "Out of all the people in my band, he always had his stuff together. I never knew him to be." He would be the last guy I would think to take a plane, and he had flown in this plane with him. He said he used to fly us down to San Antonio, and he was a software engineer, he recorded music, and so basically his house was, although you could see in the garage, that wasn't totally destroyed, but the upper floor was totally destroyed. There was maybe a few parts of walls left up there, and from what we were gathering, there was a guy who's the neighbor Elbert who said he called the cops. Or he called 911 at about between 9:15 and 9:30. He wasn't exactly sure, but he said they arrived within 5 minutes, the fire department. I talked to a lady who didn't want to be on camera. The two neighbors directly next door, they weren't answering the doors, but the ones on the other sides, the one guy's name was Elbert, and then there was this other lady who actually left for work at 8:45 in the morning and didn't see a fire. And then she was told, well, apparently it was going on when she left for work. She just didn't notice.
This is today.
This is today, this morning.
Well, how does where is this in Austin?
This is north off of Palmer Lane, which is north of where he hit. And apparently he flew out of Georgetown Airport.
So it isn't on fire at 8 when?
8:45.
8:45, he drives to Georgetown during traffic. That's got to take an hour.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then
he hits it.
So 8:45, 9:45, he gets in the plane. I guess he could in 10 minutes fly down south at 9:55 and hit it.
Yeah, yeah. And
if he said it right at 9:45.
Sure. Well, the neighbor, when he went outside, he saw flames pouring out of the place because they heard this sound. It was the sound that they were alerted to. They heard this weird sound. He walked outside. He saw flames coming out of the windows. Called the fire department.
Because he didn't want to give the IRS the house.
Probably it, yeah.
If he's just a crazy and not listen, Operation Northwoods. Everyone should read it. ABC News, Library of Congress, Baltimore Sun, Associated Press. U.S. government plan to terrorize cities as pretext for war with Cuba. They said they would have CIA operatives, and that's the kind of folks they have, the quiet guy, stage their death. They would get on a plane, it would land somewhere else, a similar plane would be remote-controlled, and then to be blamed. And we know on 9/11 they brought the hijackers in, they protected them, they gave them visas, they were trained at U.S. military bases, then this happened. So we know it's an inside job, we don't know the details. It's the same thing over and over again. It could be he was a lone nut and did this. But you see this whole buildup and me freaking out around the office saying, they're about to hit, they're about to hit. Am I normally like that, Rob?
No, usually, you know, I mean,
what have I been like?
You're yourself, but
what have I been like lately? I mean, have I been telling you guys?
Oh, yeah, you've been saying it. It's been, yeah, you've been making those predictions. And
on
usually,
air, but.
Yeah, usually you don't say, you know, I'm predicting this, you know, but when you start doing that, that's when, you know, stuff seems to, you know, happen.
And it's more than just the data. I mean, it is the data, but it's like I start waking up in the middle of the night. I start, when they launch a new, and like Beck, I can't stand to watch him. I just know he's evil, and then I watch and it's pure evil. And I mean, tonight he was saying this is a constitutionalist, the birthers are the #1 enemy, they're terrorists, we've got to get them. I mean, again, if Oberman said that, people would ignore him, but it's Beck who we can trust. He's one of us.
Yeah.
The 60s and 70s that were real. Some were staged by government. Most were real. Communist groups, Black Panthers, others. And when you have a real terror attack, the news has an agreement with the government, and Mike was talking about this, to not cover it. There have been massive attacks against IRS buildings over the years. But when you have a real attack, they don't give attention to the terrorist. When you have a staged attack, you see a massive media blitzkrieg all over the world, all over the U.S., all over Europe. All you're seeing is this. All you're hearing is this. Now, it's not up on Infowars.com yet. We're having server problems from so much traffic. Our webmasters are locked out. It's up on prisonplanet.com right.
Echelon 3.
Can you show me exactly where, can you show our viewers exactly where you believe that plane hit?
See the white smoke?
Okay, we're live at 6:12 Central Standard Time, 6:12 p.m. and 27 seconds. That was from 3:15 or so Central today when I was in Russia Today. Now, let's be clear here. I heard Mike Rivero just scanning through the dial on local Austin radio, Genesis talk show host. He formerly worked with big media news. He started What Really Happened in like 95, exposed the government for Vince Foster and things, lost his contacts. But he said what I already knew and what has been in many journalistic publications. There were over 1,000 bombings and terror attacks. And
it shot right across the road. It was going really fast. Those aren't fast airplanes. They cruise about 115. And he was, it's telling if the engine was on full blast. Of course, I can't testify to that, but it sure was hauling.
Oh, man.
It was a really speedy dive, and it whacked into right between the first and second floor.